Ruchem Abayim to the 8th in the series of shiurim, lectures on the Midos, the 13 immutable principles and exegesis of the Torah Shabbat. We've taken a break, which has given us some time to reflect upon the previous shiur. Even Moshe Rabbeinu had to be misbaining in Parsha la Parsha. And if I would like to summarize a little bit what we spoke about last time, we spoke about a Gemara in Tazayim Aleph and Tabura, which speaks about Kavachoymes, Gzeir Shabbos, which were forgotten during the time of the Veilus of Moshe Rabbeinu, the time of the morning of Moshe Rabbeinu. And the Gemara says that these were forgotten, and the Gemara says that Ostil ben Kenaz, right, recovered them, for his marks of them of Hiderach HaPilpul. In other words, that in fact actually, and I raised the question, or wanted to make note of the fact that Chazal, when they tell us things like that, are not just interested in historical tidbits that are that might or might not be of interest to us, but actually Chazal are actually coming to tell us something about the process of the Torah Sh'Bi'al Peh. And my understanding of that Gemara, the way we understood the Gemara, was basically that we will note that at the very beginning of the Braisa, at the very beginning of the Teres Kahanim, right, it begins with the Braisa of Rabbi Yishmael, which lists the Yud Gimel Midos. But then we see clearly in the rest of Teres Kahanim that it's very, very rarely that one of the Midos is used, in a formal manner, but rather much of Teres Kahanim really consists of pilpul. In other words, that kalach l'derech zeh, kalach l'derech zeh. In other words, basically, there are diukim from different words in psukim, not necessarily the midah, parts of the midah, but a lot of the great bulk of the Teres Kahanim really deals with a type of a shakavataya, give and take, a dialectic, and trying to understand logically the Torah Sh'Bi'al Peh, and the midah is not just used in a formal manner, but rather it is incorporated into a pilpul, into a dialectical give and take. And I wanted to claim that in fact, this is what in fact the Gemara in Tabura is referring to. It says there seems to be that after Hillel established the Yud Gimel, well, after Hillel established formally, I should say formally, right, the Yud Gimel Midos as we understand them, and these were expanded according to the Mefarshim by Rabbi Yishmael, right? This was the period in which the establishment of the axioms and the postulates by which the Torah will be interpreted. And in a certain sense, I won't say it was, chas v'shalom, we can't say they were forgotten, but somehow we enter into a new paradigm, we enter into a new era, in fact, actually, where the things from the psukim are actually subject to much more of a pilpul. We saw a lot of this in Parak HaChovel, Bava Kama, in the case of Rav Ashi, and it was on the basis of that Gemara that the Nuka Yosef established that really many times Chazal, after a Rabbi get a conclusion of Pisvara, will affix it to one of the Yud Gimel Midos, and we discussed that in detail. But here we're actually seeing is that in fact actually this represents a new type of a tekufa, a new type of an era, a new type of a paradigm, where in fact actually while one can detect the methodology of the Midos, the fact is that many times the Midos are reduced to very, very small diukim from psukim, or even not a diuk, but nonetheless emphasizing a word, and on the basis of this, the Teres Kahanim enters into a very, very conceptual give and take in how to apply the diuk and what law to assign it. And this, in fact, actually Chazal are telling us through the Agadata that appears in Tabura Daf Tazayin. That's a summary, yeah. So
Gemara says they had the Midos from Moshe,
and they were lost, right?
And then rediscovered by Othniel.
And we spoke about the Nishtaka means a new paradigm. That's what it means in Chazal.
And then they were rediscovered though by Othniel.
Right, well, yeah, what is
so
that?
So now Hillel, forgotten, are they rediscovered?
No, there was Nishtaka. There's a new, no, I think not Hillel. I would say Rabbi Yishmael.
Hillel, Rabbi Yishmael.
Right.
Discovered them.
We're not discovered them.
Whatever,
reformalized. Right. We believe they were the Shamayim. Right.
They were forgotten.
Right.
Or fell into disuse.
They were called the Nishtaka, which means a new paradigm.
But then there's no Othniel ben Kenaz coming to reinstate.
No, but this, so this is the Teres Kahanim. This is the Teres Kahanim. We see the Stam of Teres Kahanim, and Chazal afterwards, even the Morayim, for example, we see a lot of pilpul in applying the Midos. Because where we see the right, then we see the right. That's what the Gemara says. I mean, the Gemara makes brings from a little from a pasuk about Sil ben Kanaz. But my claim is that the Agarta of Sil ben Kanaz is not is as well as telling us. I mean, Chas v'Shalom, we don't deny the historical truth also of Masim Kil Pilpul, but Chazal are telling us that, right, for our information that we have periods, different paradigms. And in fact, actually, the paradigm of course, there are Midas before Hillel too, but we spoke about that Hillel somehow formalized it differently. And then this period of formalization lasts for a certain time, and then somehow it's given new expression through the Derech HaPilpul, just like the Mishnah and the Gemara, etc., etc. Now, I want to go a little bit further on this, because I think this is a very important point, and I think this is actually going to be important for us, and we understand really the nature of this new era. Now, the Gemara says in Pei Vav Ben Aleph that even though the Stam Sifra, right, it speaks about the Stam Sifra, but the Gemara says Ali b'Rabbi Akiva, and it's clear that many portions of Sifra seem to indicate that certainly it's going Stam Ali b'Rabbi Akiva, as we'll see in a little while. And it's interesting that we see in many places the dispute between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yishmael, which I think I want to focus on here. Now, of course, I don't want to go into there's an entire history to exactly, what is there in fact a machlekes of Rabbi Yishmael over methodology. I don't want to go into this now. Maybe another time we'll go into it. 90% of what's written on this is basically development Talem. But in any case, there's no question about it that many people have noted, including David Tzvi Hoffman, that the Sifra certainly bears very strong the mark, the imprint of the Shita of Rabbi Akiva. And I want to speak about what is the Shita of Rabbi Akiva, in particular, how it relates to that of Rabbi Yishmael. Now, there's a very, very famous machlokes, which most of you are familiar with because it appears in Rashi and the Chumash, in Parshas Bahal. And there, Rashi brings a shita of Rabbi Akiva that Kololos Protos Nemel B'Sinai, but as is well known, this is a dispute in Saita, Besachas Saita, Daf Lamed Zayin Amud Beis, folio 37, side Bay. And there, the Gemara says, Tanya, Rabbi Shmuel Omer, Kololos Nemel B'Sinai, the klolos, the general rules, or the general things, we'll speak with what is general here, was said in Sinai. Upratos ba'Ohel Moed. The details were said in Ohel Moed. That's what Rabbi Yishmael holds. And the reason I'm actually focusing on this Gemara is because many times there's a dispute between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yishmael, and the Gemara has different ways of interpreting them. Here we have actually the machlokes kav yosei, the way it is. And Rabbi Akiva says no. Klolos upratos demu b'Sinai. Both the general things and the details were said at Sinai. Finished the Ohel Moed, and then were repeated again in Ohel Moed. Finished Talshul ba'Avos Moed, and then there was said a third time in Avos Moed. Now, the machlokes pashtus in a simply speaking. In other words, what's immediate is that Rabbi Akiva and Yishmael are not really speaking about the Torah Shebe'al Peh. Those of you who are aware of this, from the Perush of Mishnayos of the Rambam actually applies Rabbi Yishmael and says explicitly in this Perush of Mishnayos that Rabbi Akiva is speaking about the halachot HaMekubalos, which is the Torah Shebe'al Peh, halachot Rosh Sinai. But the pashtus, the simple, the apparent reading of this dispute has nothing to do with Torah Shebe'al Peh. Like Rashi explains in here in Saita, Klolos Nemra B'Sinai. So says Rashi, B'stam Nemra Torah B'Sinai. Right? The Torah was said at Sinai, V'lonis Parshal, and it wasn't explained in detail. Could go into this Rashi. B'Sinai it says, V'zavachta olav b'tzaylasecha v'yeshlamecha. It says in Shmois Chav, V'zavachta olav, you shall sacrifice olasecha v'yeshlamecha. Right? The oilers and shlom are different types of sacrifices. V'lo pirish matan dam on ketzat. It doesn't speak about how you sprinkle the blood. Right? Torah about the Dom Ketzak, Torah Emorim, does speak about the burning the limbs on the altar, Hefshef and Nituach, how you peel off the skin of the animal, and how you chop up the animal and bring it to the Mizbeach. The clothes shall oilo, the same Vayikbal and Pilsh. In other words, what Rashi is saying is that the machlokes between Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva is a machlokes and how to read the Chumash. In other words, the Chumash says in Shmais, which I think this is Mishpatim, which is in fact actually at Mount Sinai, as it says, and there is speaks about generally sacrificing things. But only in Vayikra, which is Ohel Moed, the Torah actually makes explicit the details of the korban. Vayikra is devoted, Teres Kahana is devoted to the details of the korban. So Rashi gives us an example. So in other words, there wasn't a flip between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yishmael. So Rabbi Yishmael says, learn the Chumash, right, as it appears to be saying, that we see that Al Sinai, many mitzvahs are said only in a general sense. And we see that later on, mitzvahs said at Sinai are said in the general sense. And then we see that that's in Shemais. And then we see later on, in Vayikra, in Bamidbar, in the Devarim, that in fact actually there's much more some mitzvahs are repeated with tremendous more detail. So Rabbi Yishmael says in such cases, we say the mitzvah was actually revealed to Klal Yisrael, to the Jewish people, in a general sense. General sense, right? And then afterwards the details were provided, when Moshe Rabbeinu spoke, we mentioned Akuvim, and Ohel Moed, and once again in Avos Maya. But Rabbi Akiva says no. Rabbi Akiva says these details which we find in the Chumash, right, were all revealed at Mount Sinai too, and they were just like repeated once again in Ohel Moed, and once again Avos Maya. In other words, the dispute between Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva is the dispute based on how to read the Chumash. In other words, yeah.
So the people on the tape, what does Rabbi Triebitz understand by Ohel Moed? It's very simple.
Probably in Vayikra.
Meaning for the 40 years in the desert?
Right, yeah, until Avos Maya. Avos Maya is probably in the Mishnah Torah, in the Chumash Devarim. That was Ohel Moed is probably Vayikra and Bamidbar.
I mean, those two books of the Torah written post Sinai, post Mount Sinai.
Well, there's a machlokes how the Torah was written.
I'm saying,
but no. It's independent of the machlokes when the Torah pasha. I'm not speaking about the machlokes. When we see, for example, that the Chumash speaks about something general, you should offer sacrifices. Then we see this tremendous amount of details which are revealed in Ohel Moed. Do we assume that they already, when Moshe Rabbeinu was also taught all these details at Sinai? Or no, there was a general command to bring korbanos, and then later on, when they constructed Ohel Moed, the second year of the Midbar, after Matan Torah, right? Then he was commanded all deals of details. In other words, the way the Chumash reports it, that's the manner which was revealed.
So how's that not the same machlokes as Pasha Nitna?
No, that's a different thing. The question is how Moshe Rabbeinu wrote down the Torah. That's a different thing. In other words, Moshe Rabbeinu could have written down the Baruch Hu detailed how to write down the Torah. The question is, was he aware of these? In other words, was it right? But no, that's like that. That's a different thing. So the Pasha means how did Moshe Rabbeinu write the Torah? In other words, did he write the Torah, piece? Did he write the very end of the Abba Mishana? The question is how the Torah taught orally to Moshe Rabbeinu. Was it taught to him, like in a general way, at Mount Sinai? And then afterwards, when Moshe Rabbeinu came into Ohel Moed, he was taught all the details? Or was he taught all the details at Mount Sinai already?
So he had a text, but he didn't understand
what the text, maybe he wrote down not the down. But what happens, he was taught the mitzvahs. And the question is, was he taught the mitzvahs, was he just taught the mitzvahs in the general sense? Or was he taught all the details at Mount Sinai? That's the machlokes of Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yishmael. It has nothing to do with the way the Torah was written down. Wait a second. Now, so, the question is, your question is, very, very nice machlokes. L'may nafkamina. What do I have to know this machlokes for? Okay, so Kubas L'mi is a machlokes how to learn the Chumash. But as I said before, we spoke about last year, I don't believe the Chazal are interested in historical tidbits, how to read a Pasha in the Chumash. I don't think, every Chazal is coming to elucidate, in my opinion, a principle that is important for understanding Chazal. Okay? So, the fact is, right, what here, in other words, what's the machlokes of Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva? Now obviously, there's no question of the matter that they're arguing on how to learn the Chumash. But I claim that their argument on how to learn the Chumash has consequences beyond the Chumash. I've already quoted to you the Rambam in the Parish of Mishnayos, who understands that the protos that Rabbi Akiva is speaking about are not the protos that appear in the Chumash, but that the protos of the Torah Shebial Peh, of the oral law. The Rambam says explicitly in the Parish of Mishnah, I'll come to the Parish of Mishnayos. Oh, there the Rambam tells us, speaking about the halachas Mekubal, so Rambam Shitasa. Probably the Ramban in the She'er HaSheni will tell us that the protos refers to, the entire, all the Torah Shulchan, Torah Shebial Peh. Okay, but in any case, that's the Rambam. But I want to claim, what are the consequences of this machlokes? So first of all, I want to bring two sources which I think are relevant here. First of all, there's a Teres Kahanim, which appears to be Stam like Rabbi Akiva. It doesn't say Rabbi Akiva, it's Stam Rabbi Akiva, which is that the Teres Kahanim is actually, at least at this point, is going Stam like Rabbi Akiva. Now, where's the Teres Kahanim? It's in Parshas Tzav, Perek Yud Ches, and I guess it's, it's called Halacha Gimel. Okay, Tzav 18:3. Okay, figuring out where to find. It's at the very, very end. It's at the very, very end of Parshas Tzav before the Miluyim of Tzav. Okay. Now, I want to read you this Teres Kahanim, and the Teres Kahanim is going to say something which appears to be certainly according to the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, but it's said a little bit differently. Okay. It says the Teres Kahanim, Zois HaTorah, La'oila, La'mincha, La'chatas, La'ashav, Li'miluim. Okay, this is in Vayikra, I think it's Perek Zayin, maybe it's Pasuk, either Lamed Vav or Lamed Ches. Zois HaTorah, La'oila, La'mincha, La'chatas, La'ashav, La'miluim. Actually, those of you sing the Zapil, that they sing the full Musaf on Yom Tov, right? It quotes this pasuk here. Now, says the Teres Kahanim on this pasuk, Ma miluyim nemu klolosayim tutukeyim misinai. Just like the miluyim, the klolosayim tutukeyim, the klol mitukim was said in Sinai. Av kulam nemu klolosayim tutukeyim misinai. Also here too, the klol mitukim was said at Sinai. Now it's very, very interesting if we're medayik, if we could actually examine the lashon, the language of the Teres Kahanim. See, the lashon of the Gemara is Rabbi Yishmael oimer klolos demus in upotos Ohel Moed, details. In other words, a klolim is a general command, and a prat is a specific command. But in other words, both klal and prat are referring to something in Torah Shebachsav, which, as Rashi explains. Here, the lashon is klolosayim diktukeyim. Diktukeyim is used in the sense of diktukei sefer. In other words, diktukeyim here refers more to what I would call Torah Shebial Peh. Okay? Diktukei sefer. The Gemara says it tomorrow. They forgot a certain amount of diktukei sefer. So it says, Ma miluyim nemu klolosayim diktukeyim b'Sinai. Av kulam nemu klolosayim diktukeyim b'Sinai. And then the Gemara goes on and makes like a binyan av. Ima miluyim korban tzibur av einli ele korban tzibur korban yochim nayin tamad loyma v'la asham. So the Gemara here is making a hekesh between the korban tzibur. In other words, what do we say? Right? We see over here is that the and then the Gemara concludes and says Shiur tzivah Hashem is Moshe Mount Sinai. Here the Gemara seems to be, the Teres Kahanim is clearly learning that not only are we saying that all the details of the Pir of the Chumash were taught at Sinai, but in fact actually that the diktukim that apply to one type of korban also apply to other korbanos too, which already means is that the pratim, the diktukim we're speaking about are not only those of the Torah Shebachsav, but also of the Torah Shebial Peh too. Now, I have here, I want to quote for you here, I'm actually put a check on the Sefer because I'm taking the Malbim, the Fukoisai, and there it says in the Pasuk, right, This is at the very, very end of Vayikra. I don't have the nice new edition of Teres Kahanim for the for the rest. I don't know they came in the second volume. In Parak, at the end of Parach Havav, Pasuk Mem Vav, it says Eila hachukim v'mishpatim v'atayros asher nosan Hashem beinoi uvein bnei Yisrael b'har Sinai b'yad Moshe. Okay? Now, I'm going to read you here. It appears in the Teres Kahanim. Eila hachukim v'mishpatim v'atayros. Okay? Hachukim, the chukim, elu ha-midrashos. These are midrashos. Mishpatim, elu ha-dinim. Va-teres, Malame comes to teach us, sheshnei teres nitnu lehem Yisrael. Yisrael was given 2 teres. Echad v'chsav, ve'echad b'al peh. Okay? So, in other words, the Teres Kahanim says, there are 3 expressions. Chukim refers to midrashos. What that means we'll explain in a little while. Mishpatim refers to dinner. Okay, that makes sense. And teres, here the deal, because teres is lashon rabbim, is being used in the plural. What do you mean there are 2 teres? Like the Bible says in Shabbos, stuff on the cube, right? But rather, one is teresh l'sav, teresh b'yal peh. Okay. Amar Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva comes to argue. Amar Rabbi Akiva. V'chi shtei teres hayol lehem Yisrael? You're telling me Yisrael only had 2 teres, one teresh l'sav, teresh b'yal peh? V'alo teres harbe dit lehem. There were many teres given to Klal Yisrael. Zois teres ha'oila, zois teres ha'mincha, zois teres ha'asham, zois teres zevach ha'shlamim, zois ha'tera adam ki yomas ba'oil. In other words, Rabbi Akiva list, every time it says zois teres whatever carbon it is. Asher nosan Hashem beinoi uvein bnei Yisrael, right? Etc. Right? V'hal Sinai b'yad Moshe malamed shenitna ha'tera hilchoseh diktukeh o perushea ayidei Moshe misinai. So here we see explicitly that Rabbi Akiva learns that the din of klolos and diktukim actually refers to what? Actually refers to the entire gamut of the teresh b'yal peh. He says, right? Malamed shenitna ha'tera hilchoseh halachos diktukeh diktukim uperushim and perushim ayidei Moshe misinai. Okay? So we see clearly here that the Teres Kahanim has an expanded version of Rabbi Akiva from the Klolim Upratos, from in the Gemara, which is referred only to the Teresh B'chsav. Here we see that in fact the Teres Kahanim understood the machlokes of Rabbi Akiva, at least Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Yishmael, is that the entire gamut of Teresh b'yal peh, halachos, diktukim, perushim, they all come from Ayidei Moshe Misinai. Okay? Now, a question is, what is this there appears to clearly be a machlokes here? There's a Tana Kama that says that Chukim is midrashos, Mishpatim is dinner, and Teres, there are two Teres that were given to Yisrael, Echad Shebechsav and Echad Sheb'yal peh. So what is Rabbi Akiva coming to argue? I'm going to call him Tana Kama Teres Kahanim. What is Rabbi Akiva coming to argue? Right? I don't see so much that I'm actually reading from the Malbim. I don't see what the Malbim really has much to say on this. I don't, whatever it is. But I want to in fact actually suggest what I think the machlokes is. Okay? I can't say that Tana Kama is Rabbi Yishmael. That was who said, Divrei Rabbi Yishmael. But it's clear that Rabbi Akiva is coming to argue on Tana Kama. At the end I'm going to claim that it might as well be Rabbi Yishmael. But I can't say something that Chazal didn't say. Chas v'shalom. But what's it mashma? It's mashma from Tana Kama is that there's 2 Teres. There's a Teres Shir Peh Teres B'chsav. In other words, they were given as separate. That's mashma. Teres means 2 Teres. So what is Rabbi Akiva saying? So there's a lot of Teres. There's a lot of Teres. Which means to imply is that there's so many Teres, there's no, in other words, and he says, Diktukeyim, in other words, he ends, Tiktukayim. In other words, halachos. So Hilchosayim, one can understand that maybe this refers to the two Torahs. And of course, Perushim, now one says, Chukim Elu HaMidrashos. Why should a chayk be a medrash? If you understand, this is what I want to say, this is my chiddush, that if a chayk refers to the, what's a chayk? You wouldn't call a medrash a chayk. But maybe midrash is referred to the Midos. In other words, a chayk is a law by which I dash in the Torah. In other words, instead of calling a midah, I call it a chayk. So in other words, what was given, according to Tanakama, what was given at Sinai, what was given was the chukim Ohel Moed, which I understand to be the midas, were given at Sinai, right? By which we exegesis, right? The rule, the hermeneutical rules of exegesis, the title of the series of shiurim, of which this is named. And in other words, the exegetical rules were given at Sinai. Okay, as is the opinion of just about all the Rishonim, that the Midos are halachot l'meshvi Sinai. And then he says, okay, mishpatim adina. Okay, and Torahs, it must be Torahs means two Torahs, Torah Sav, Torah Shel Peh. In other words, that can be called like halachot l'meshvi Sinai. Things which are, in other words, things which are the in other words, what you would call like things which are halachot l'meshvi Sinai, which are not connected with the Torah Shebaksav. If something connected to the Torah Shebaksav, then it's a drasha.
Why are dinim nichal in?
I don't know. I'm not sure. Could possibly be like Rabbi Yishmael says in Ovais that basically the dinim are things that a person used to be learned al pi seichel or it's lahachkim yasik dinim mamanaish. In other words, they just given at Sinai too. But I'm saying is what we have over here is that Tanakama seems to understand is that there are Yugimah Midas which are given at Sinai, and the details are learned afterwards at Ohel Moed, which means the drushes are made afterwards. Like the Rambam says in Shirasheni, and the Gemara says that the Rambam brings Gemara to go that Tazayin the Moshe Rabbeinu made Kavachayim as a Gezer Shabbos. In other words, Moshe Rabbeinu was given the Yugimah Midas at Sinai, and then after that he applied the rules in a formal way, and he came up with all the different laws that come as a consequence of these midas. And then, of course, two Torahs. There's Torah Shebaksav, Torah Shebaksav. The Torah Shebaksav was given separately from Torah Shebaksav, because if it had a basis in the Rush, you wouldn't call it two Torahs. Says Rabbi Akiva, no, it's all one. You can't distinguish Torah Shebaksav and Torah Shebaksav. It's all one. Now, I want to point out an interesting thing. We don't learn Ein Leim Dim and Agaritas. The Gemara says, the Yerushalmi says, but it's interesting, is that there's a pasuk in Shmois, Vayu ha'amas hakolos. So what does it mean Yosef as a kolos? B'chosei Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Yishmael. So I think Rabbi Yishmael remember the ruas hemirolas hanira v'shamus hanishma, something like that. But Rabbi Akiva goes on and says roas hanishma v'shamus hanira. Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Yishmael. In other words, according to Rabbi Akiva, they saw that which is heard, and they heard that which is seen. Now, something which what do you see? You see Torah Shebaksav. What do you hear? Torah Shebaksav. So, what Rabbi Akiva seems to me the pshat in this bechilta, right? I forgot to put the bechilta in front of me, but you can check me out, right? The machlokes dispute in Bechilta Rabbi Akiva Yishmael is a very, very simple machlokes. According to Rabbi Yishmael, there's a Torah Shebaksav and a Torah Shebaksav. They're two separate things. They were both given at Sinai, but what do you mean two separate things? They're going to be separate. The laws of the Midos, the general structures, the logical structures of exegesis were given at Sinai. But according to Rabbi Akiva, no, it's all one the same thing. In other words, basically, right? The entire Torah Shebaksav is also a Torah Shebaksav. It's all one thing. A little bit like the Beis HaLevi says in the famous drasha, that the beginning of the Torah is supposed to be given together. That's actually Shittas Rabbi Akiva. Now, what comes out, I want to claim this is also Gemara, the famous Gemara in Menachos Chavtesim and Beis. The Moshe Rabbeinu was shown Rabbi Akiva was being deresh the Kisei Isis. He's saying making drashas of the crowns and the letters. The same thing too. In other words, And he says, the Kosh Baruch Hu bima akev al yadcha. But the fact is that for Rabbi Akiva, there was no distinction between every detail of the Torah Sheb'al. We found Torah Sheb'al, but every detail of Torah has the expression Torah Sheb'al. Now, and this seems to be the machlokes here between Rabbi Akiva and Tanakh, and I'm going to call Tanakh Rabbi Yishmael, even though I'm, chas v'shalom, I shouldn't say Rabbi Yishmael, but it seems to me that based upon the Mechilta in Rabbi Yishmael Rabbi Akiva, for all intents and purposes, this might as well be Rabbi Yishmael. Now, so what did Rabbi Akiva do? What did Rabbi Akiva do? I claim Rabbi Akiva introduces the new paradigm. Because the Gemara says, Mishnah, this and that, Teres Kahanim, Mechilta, Sifra, it's cool only by Rabbi Akiva. But what I claim is that Rabbi Akiva, what he did was, the Midos are not a separate axiomatic thing from which one derives halachas. The etzem, the Torah Sheb'al Peh, the Torah Sheb'al is inundated with Torah Sheb'al Peh. That's what Gemara says. Gemara says Sanhedrin, the Rabbi Akiva darshan ubas koyem, and Rabbi Yishmael says to Rabbi Akiva, right? Rabbi Yishmael says to Rabbi Akiva, from one vav you're sending her to Sreifa. And even the Gemara says in Memtes and Saita, Misha Meis Rabbi Akiva, the Gemara says Batal Kavrat Torah. Rashi quotes there at the end of Saita. In fact, actually, I didn't bring, unfortunately, I didn't prepare myself well with Sfarim, but Baruch Hashem, it's actually the same thing. Misha Meis Rabbi Akiva, Batal Kavrat Torah. So Rashi brings Gemara there in Sanhedrin, Nunalaf Abad Beis. Rabbi Yishmael, Shaya Noisen Liboy, L'droish Kol Koitz for Koitz. On every little koitz, every little protrusion of every letter. Shall call oitz. For kol shekain, tevas yisegas, for oitzias yisegas can go bas, ubas, and idoresh. Now, the mice, who's arguing him? Who's arguing? It's Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael is Sanhedrin Nunalaf Abad Beis. I was Rabbi Akiva. V'zeu kavanat Torah gadosh ein ba dovel of atala. What's Rashi explaining to? Torah Sheb'al. In other words, Rabbi Yishmael understood that there's the Midos halachot Moshe Sinai that was given at Mount Sinai, and from that comes the halachas of the Torah Sheb'al Peh. Rabbi Akiva says no, there's nothing but the Torah Sheb'al. In other words, you don't need it. Even though Rabbi Akiva will speak about it because he's minded to the Midos, but nonetheless the drashas of Rabbi Akiva go beyond the formal Midos. He's doing a Shavi letter. And of course when you're doing a Shavi letter, this requires more pilpul, because it's not the formal usage, the formal application of a Midah. To get every letter, a person has to, through Svala, understand what letters that thing coming to express in the pasuk. And that requires much more pilpul. And so, in other words, we see over here, this is what I want to claim, is that the person who, the emergence of the new paradigm comes with Rabbi Akiva. Because Rabbi Akiva. Because Rabbi Akiva collapses a little bit the formal system of the Midos, right? And he'll use Midos, but he'll be much more, in other words, liberal with uses of the Midos. And the Midos are not so much the application of formal rules of logic, but rather more diktukim, which emphasize every letter of every word that's written in the Torah Sheb'al. This is the sheet of Rabbi Akiva. Yeah, what's bothering you?
Doesn't the Gemara in Sota imply that the opposite? Rabbi Akiva was the end of the year, not the beginning of a new year.
No, but Rice is in the end. Batal Kavod Torah.
Moshe Meis Rabbi Akiva. Batal this. Rabbi Akiva used to.
Okay, well, and we'll speak about Moshe Meis. It's up to now. Well, he was the person. Rashi says that he was nice and libel and drosh.
Right.
I guess in other words, he was the person who did this the most. It was okay. We'll get to it. Rabbi Akiva up to Rabbi Akiva agree with me, right?
Yes.
Okay, very good. That's all I need. Okay, fine. Now, because the Stam Sifra is Rabbi Akiva. I mean, some sure, but I'm saying it's a little bit Rabbi Akiva.
So Rabbi Yishmael was using a formalized system that it cuts down, even though maybe it was crystallized by Hillel a little bit, but it was a formalized system.
Right.
So Rabbi Akiva, where was he? Was he claiming that the halachas that he got were all said at Sinai?
So let me give you.
Or was he just using a new methodology?
No. Father, everybody agrees that they were said at Sinai, but according to Rabbi Akiva, no.
Does that mean everyone agrees?
Well, no.
Every drasha was this is Darish Rishonim.
No. Let me just explain why I'm not going to Darish Rishonim versus the. I just want to the very simple thing is that Rabbi Yishmael seems to be claiming that the methodology, the logic, was given at Sinai, and the rabbis just applied the methodology later on in history. But since the methodology was given at Sinai, so it's as if the Durash is Rabbi Sinai. That's what Rabbi Yishmael learns. But She'enken, according to Rabbi Akiva, no, all the details were taught by Shebein at Sinai.
So Rabbi Akiva...
Why? Because there is no formal methodology. You see, when there's no formal methodology, right, so there's only the Torah Shebachsav, and all of the details and innuendos of it.
So why did Moshe Rabbeinu not understand Rabbi Akiva?
We'll speak about that. We'll get to that. We'll get to that in a little while. Okay?
Teretz is Rabbi Yishmael.
Right. Okay, we'll get to that. Right now, what I'm trying to do right now is just trying to explain this Bachos Rabbi Akiva Rabbi Yishmael. Right? Because there's 100 theories and thousands of works, and I'm just trying to explain. On this thing, they seem to be they're clearly arguing on. Now, what I want to do is I need a Gemara Shavuos. Okay? I'm sorry, let the reader digest this a little bit. Oh, Shkoya, thank you very much. Now, for sure, we see. Oh, and also the Gemara needed to. I'm sorry. What I want to do is, of course, Rabbi Akiva used to make this too. I mean, Shkoya, thank you very much. But I want to illustrate two places where there's actually a machlekes of Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva over the uses of the Midos, and I want to speak about them a little bit, okay? This is very, very important. Now, we know that one of the Midos, it appears in the Midos of Hillel, and in Rabbi Yishmael, it's klatu pratu klal. Okay? Now, there's a Gemara in Shmuas, and Daf Chavav ben Aleph, where there's a machlokes of Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yishmael. Now, the Gemara, let me give a little bit of introduction here. According to the Gemara, right, Rabbi Akiva does not use the midah of klatu pratu klal. He uses the midah of v'riboy, miut v'riboy. We'll see this clearly. This is a Gemara in Shmuas. It's also to a Tosefta. This is one of the places where the Gemara actually explicitly speaks about a machlokas tanoim between Rabbi Akiva and Yishmael. Now, of course, this doesn't mean that, chas v'shalom, the klal is not, Sinai, but it's an argument of details of how to use it. I think I've already mentioned already. But I want to analyze a little bit, really, what this machlokas says. What is it between a klal of pataklal and a riboy miut v'riboy? Okay, and we see several places in Shas where this machlokas comes up. Now, the Gemara says in Chov Aleph, Tana Rabbanan, on a pasuk lahara or laheitim. It speaks about a person who makes a shvua, and it can make a shvua lahara, forbidding something laheitiv, or he's going to do something. Eli el davar b'shem behem hara v'hatova. Gemara says we only learn things that have hara v'hatova. She'ein behem hara v'hatova minayin. How do we know that if a person makes a shvua, he also brings a korban? Speaking about a korban that a person makes, if he makes a shvua and he violates a shvua, how do we know that even it doesn't involve hara v'hatova? So the minayin Talmud loyma o nefesh kisishva levativ sfasayim. It was any shvua a person makes. Right? There's not to be lahal laheitim. He's going to do something and not do something. Okay? Ainli el lahaba. Now, up to now, we're speaking about a person makes a shvua to do something in the future. The sha'ava minayin. How do we know the person brings a korban on a shvua that he made and he did said something? Talmud loyma l'chola sheyifta adam b'shvua divrei Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva says, learns a pasuk l'chola sheyifta adam. Everything a person expresses with the shvua divrei Rabbi Akiva. So according to Rabbi Akiva, we have a shvua on everything. Bein la'ava, on the past and on the future. Okay, now, Rabbi Yishmael, right? Omer, he has a machlokes. Rabbi Yishmael Omer, lahora lahetiv, lahaba. Rabbi Yishmael says no. Lahora lahetiv is only in the future. Once again, doesn't speak about the past, and certainly doesn't speak about, shvuos other than harav hatava. Amla Rabbi Akiva. So Rabbi Akiva said, very interesting, a give and take, Rabbi Akiva Yishmael. In Cain, if this is true, this is what you're saying. Ainli ela devom sheish b'em hatova ra. Right? Devom she'ein b'em harav hatova minayin. According to what you're learning, what about things that don't involve harav hatova? How do you know this? Amalai. So he said to him, Miribo Yakosov. Right? The Torah is makes a riboy, extends this. Amalai, so this is Rabbi Akiva. Im riba Yakosov, l'chach riba Yakosov. Im riba Yakosov l'chach, riba Yakosov l'chach. The one says Rabbi Akiva, if the Torah is malba things, let's say, if the Torah is marba things, for example, for every shvua, like Rabbi Akiva said, Bislam is marba things also for l'sha'ov ha'tov. In other words, Rabbi Akiva was coming to say that you have to include two things from the Torah Sheb'al Peh, from the Psukim. That it's a shvua and everything, not only harav ha'tava, and also too, it's l'sha'ava as well as l'haba. So Rabbi Akiva says, Rabbi Yishmael, you agree to me, that it doesn't only refer to a shvuah of harav hatava. First other shvuahs too, Rabbi Akiva. So Rabbi Yishmael says yes. So because how do you know that? So Rabbi Yishmael says there's a riboy in the pasuk. The Torah includes it. The Torah adds it. Rabbi Akiva says the Torah adds this. The Torah adds the other thing too. L'sha'ava. Now the Gemara says Shapa Kamal Rabbi Akiva Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Akiva's, Rabbi Akiva answered Rabbi Yishmael correct. I mean he's correct. In other words, if the Torah is adding things other than Hatava, the Torah certainly is adding things which are l'sha'ava as well as l'haba. On the Rabbi Akiva. So Rabbi Akiva says, okay, how we're following. You can look at the Gemara, you can look at, Vilna, Archko, Shans, right? On the Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Yishmael, Shishimis is Rabbi Nachulya ben Akana. Rabbi Yishmael, who's Beshamesh, Rabbi Chuna ben Akana, right? Shahaya Deiresh is called Torah Kula B'Klal U'Prat. Rabbi Nachulya ben Akana darshan the entire Torah B'Klal U'Prat. Yunami doing B'Klal U'Prat. Rabbi Yishmael also darshan B'Klal U'Prat. Interesting. Shemesh, he learned the Midos. Interesting. Here we read this deal in the second shiur that Shemesh, Shema V'Yaptaya means he learned Midos from him. He learned how to darshan here too. Rabbi Akiva, Shemesh is Nochem Lish Gamzu. She'aderish is called Torah B'Ribi U'Miyut. Unami Derish Ribi U'Miyut. It's interesting. Rabbi Akiva was B'Shamesh Nachem Gamzu. Everybody knows Nachem Zalman from the Gadatas. He was a big tzaddik. We know that he was a tremendous Talmud Chacham in the Rebbe of Rabbi Akiva. So Rabbi Akiva too is Derish the entire Torah B'Ribi U'Miyut. So the Gemara says, "My Rabbi Akiva the Derish Ribi U'Miyut." What is this Ribi U'Miyut that Rabbi Akiva is Derish? He's arguing on Rabbi Yishmael. The Tanya, the Brisa says, "All nefes kisi shofa riba." Riba means from being malba eight abeshvua. La'ala lahetiv, right? Miyat. That's b'mayit. La'ala lahetiv is a miyat. L'chol hashiyivta adam chazav v'riba. Riba miyat v'riba. Riba akov. Excludes everything. Riba's the whole kitchen sink. My riba. Riba kol mili. Includes everything. Umay miyat. Miyat devar mitzvah. It's b'mayit devar mitzvah. I think Rashi says over here, Devar Mitzvah, and also too, something that like, Mishanas Hayadul Adam, like we say, like this table is a chair. In other words, Ma'aseh Rabbi Akiva includes everything. So therefore, what's the miyat? The one word here, right? The one word here, the riboy, right? The miyat here, is might one thing. Rabbi Yishmael Dorish Klal U'Prat. What's the Klal U'Prat? So according to Rabbi Akiva, everything, Ava, Asid, every time the Shvuah, not only Harav Hatava. Now, Rabbi Yishmael the Dorish Klal U'Prat, right? O Nefesh, Kis Shava, Levaz V'Sayim, Klal Hara, O Lahetiv. So the Klal comes, La Lahetiv. פרט לכל שיפתע אדם, חוזר וכלל, כל הפרט הכלל. יהיה תדע לכלל הפרט, מה הפרט מפורש להבא, אף כל ההבא. אני כלל לא עשוי אפילו דבר שאין הרע והטוב. להבא, אני פרטי לבריאותי אפילו דבר שיש בין הרע והטוב, לשעבר. What is the machlekes here? So we see clearly, going to detail halacha, we see clearly that according to Rabbi Yishmael, he darshans a klal of prat klal, which means the pratim characterize the things that, in other words, there's a logical system here. There's a klal, I include everything. Then there's a prat, and I take the prat I generalize the prat, and I get back to the klal. In other words, a klal of prat the klal means is that the klal is ke'ein the prat, which means I take the prat and I generalize it. It's a logical system. But if you look at Rabbi Akiva, what is it? You merabah everything, and you mind one thing. Which means, what's the machlekes between a klal of prat the klal and a riboy or miyut the riboy? It's very, very partial. In a riboy, miyut and a riboy, you might, there's one word, you might, one individual thing, that's it. There's no logical structure here. It's a miyut to one thing, for one word. There's no logical system that you generalize the prat. But according to Rabbi Yishmael, a klal but the klal is actually a logical rule. What you do is a general, this is specific, and you say that the specific contains the attributes. In other words, the general rule is the general things are generalization of the specific, which means the specific thing, you generalize the attributes of the specific thing, and you include a whole class of things. That's what Rabbi Akiva Rabbi Yishmael. Okay, now, without going into the detail of the sugya, because there's a lot to speak here, Baruch Hashem, but what do I want to get at? I want to get at the interesting nekuda here. Then what has Rabbi Akiva done? This is my chiddush. Rabbi Akiva has dismantled the midah of klal prat klal. He says it doesn't exist. It's pashut a midah from one word. That's what it is. He's dismantled the entire logical structure of klal prat klal. We're not constructing a logical structure which uses the prat and the details as attributes which describe an entire class of objects. All we've done is taken one word and exclude one specific thing, and everything else applies. So what does Rabbi Akiva do? It's not a machlokes in Midos. It's a machlokes put in paradigm. Rabbi Akiva seems to be arguing on Rabbi Yishmael. He is arguing. But he's not arguing on how to create classes of objects with attributes of specific classes. He's basically saying that this is not a logical structure. This is not a class which is constructed from properties. He just says that we have a miyut, a one word, which excludes one solitary thing. That's what Rabbi Akiva does. So we have here what I spoke about, a tremendous change of paradigm. Now, I want to bring one more example of where Rabbi Akiva implodes a midah. Okay? And I'm claiming that this Gemara that I brought you with Chavav ben Aleph in Shavuos, this is a clear machos Rabbi Akiva Rabbi Yishmael. The Gemara in Maseches Nida, which has Rabbi Yishmael, doesn't have Rabbi Akiva, has Chachamim, but the Yerushalmi in Perek Zayin, Halacha Vav, says that the Baal Plukta of Rabbi Yishmael is Rabbi Akiva. Okay, now.
What page do you need?
Chad Beis Amud Beis, follow 22 side B. The Gemara says, right? Amar Rav Yehuda Bashmuel, when the Chad Beis Amud Beis is the fourth line from the bottom, Mishum Rabbi Yishmael. So Rav Yehuda Bashmuel is in the name of Rabbi Yishmael. Okay? Right? Kol Gezerah Shavah, she'ena mufne kolika, ein lamed in himenu. I think Gezerah Shavah, now, what's called mufne? Mufne means, Gezerah Shavah takes two laws that appear in two places, and looks for a word they have in common. Sometimes they don't have it in common, Shavah, whatever it is, but they have a word in common. The mufta means the word is extra. So in other words, you could have three situations. Both words on both sides of the Gezerah Shava could be extra. One word on either side could be extra, or no words could be extra. I mean, there's different, obviously we could conjure up different ways of creating structured Gezerah Shava. So, Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel says in the name of Rabbi Yishmael, Kol Gezerah Shava she'ena mufta kolika, ein lamed in himena. If the two words are not extra at all, you don't learn the Gezerah Shava. Move the mitzad echad. Now what happens if one of the two words is extra and what isn't? Okay? The Rabbi Yishmael made the Mashiach. So to Rabbi Yishmael, right, you learn the Mashiach, you can't argue logically on it. The Rabbanan made the Mashiach. The Rabbanan you can argue and you can learn, but you can also argue on it too. Now what about both the Mishneh started? What happens if the word's extra on two sides? Okay? And if it's, of course, the two words are extra, then everybody agrees that you can learn and not argue. Now, the Ma'is about Plukta of Rabbi Yishmael, like I said in Shalom Sanhedrin, is Rabbi Akiva. It doesn't have to be machlok as Rabbi Akiva and, the Yishmael and Maflik. What's the machlok case here? I think the machlok case here is very, very clear. In other words, according to Rabbi Yishmael, right? According to, in other words, actually, I think according to Rabbi Yishmael, right? In other words, the machlokes here is what happens if something's mufta mitzad echad. So according to Rabbi Yishmael, l'meid the Mashiach, which means you can learn. Actually, I'm dealing with differently. According to Rabbi Yishmael, l'meid the Mashiach basically means is that if it's mufta mitzad echad, right? So according to Rabbi Yishmael, you can learn. Chacham say you can learn, but in fact, actually, you can actually argue one or two. But it would be takes two, the Rebbe agrees you can't be mentioned. Which means like this, but if it's not motivated from any side, then you can't learn. Now, as I said, Chamas Rabbi Akiva made a mistake here. The Ushalmi says, according to Rabbi Akiva, you don't need mufta on any side. You can learn Gezerah Shava any. According to Rabbi, the Ushalmi says, according to Rabbi Akiva, you can actually make a Gezerah Shava and it doesn't have to be mufta from any side. What's the machlokes Rabbi Akiva and Yishmael? It's very, very clear. Rabbi Yishmael says that to make Gezerah Shava, at least on one, it has to be an extra word. The word has to be extra at least from one side. And of course, if it's, Rabbi Yishmael is arguing, according to Chaman, you can argue logically, because on one side there is an extra word. But for example, if not an extra word on either side, you can make a Gezerah Shava. Which means, we said here, the distinction between Torah Sheb'al and Torah Sheb'al Peh. In other words, Torah has to be what's called extra to make Torah Sheb'al Peh. In other words, there's no inherent Torah Sheb'al Peh in the Torah Sheb'al Sav, or it has to be extra to make it relate to the Gezerah Shava of the Torah Sheb'al Peh. The Yerushalmi says, according to Rabbi Akiva, even if it's not mufta at all, you can make a Gezerah Shava. Meaning what? According to Rabbi Akiva, it has to be extra. Because the Torah Sheb'al Peh is implicit in the Torah Sheb'al Sav. And I would claim, what does it mean? It means the following thing. In other words, according to Rabbi Akiva, the details of the Torah Sheb'al Sav, even though not extra, constitute the Torah Sheb'al Peh. Torah Sheb'al Peh is much more, it's shakua. It's inherent in the Torah Sheb'al Sav. According to Rabbi Akiva, you need an extra word. You need an extra word. You can't, in other words, the Torah Sheb'al Peh is not inherently part. It's much more of two bodies, two separate things. But that's Usham. So, in other words, what I want to claim is that we see over here. Now, I mean, the Gemara is in the Machlos Yachacham and Rabbi Yishmael and Chachamar. Rabbi Yishmael has a much more radical opinion. But what do we see? That Rabbi Akiva did ascribe to the Midos, but his use of the Midos is much, much different. At least in these two cases. In other words, according to Rabbi Yishmael, the Midos are much more formal systems, formal structures, and they live on extra words in the Torah. It's a Hashem. According to Rabbi Akiva, no. The Midos are part of the Torah itself. They're not formal systems. One word. In other words, when you have a klal upon the klal, it's not a logical structure. It's just an extra word. Once you have a klal, who needs an extra word? So an extra word comes to my mind. It's good one individual thing. Yeah.
Can I ask, maybe this is about a Basisha question, but is Rabbi Akiva, are the dinim that Rabbi Akiva produces chidushim, or are they all passed down from Sinai? Because with Rabbi Yishmael...
I want to answer that question right now. No, Rabbi Akiva claims you're right, but what does it mean they were from Sinai? According to Rabbi Akiva, the entire Torah Sheksav is inundated with the Torah Sheksav.
The reason I'm asking like this, Rabbi Yishmael is learning through a methodology.
Right.
Rabbi Akiva is learning through a broader methodology.
In fact, it's so broad that
it's almost not a methodology. It's deconstructed almost entirely.
Right.
If Rabbi Akiva is being mechadesh, and I know you're not going to answer that question right now, if he's being mechadesh, okay, then on what basis is he being mechadesh?
So Rabbi Akiva say very simply, since my Torah Peh is inundated, since the Torah Sheb'al which is given, all that was given Sinai, is saturated with the Torah Sheb'al Peh, so it was all taught at Sinai. Because it was inherent in the Torah Sheb'al Peh at Sinai.
Taught at Sinai, and I learned this from my Rebbe, or taught at Sinai, and
whatever it is, that's the same thing. That's the same thing. It's the same thing. In other words, that's what Rabbi Akiva is saying. What Akiva is saying is, the Torah Sheb'al is saturated. It's part of the Torah Sheb'al. So it was given at Sinai too. According to Rabbi Yishmael, even though the methodology was given, man has to make the logical deductions. Okay, there's more to your question which I want to answer, but I don't want to answer right now. Anyway, in any case, there's only 2 minutes to go. But I think that we've accomplished our purpose. And I want to wish you all from an undisclosed place in Yerushalayim HaKodesh. Until next week, Kol Tov, and let's start stacking again.